Hi, everyone. My name is Prasanna, and I'm a medical student from the class of 2024 at the University of Minnesota. And today I'm here with Princess Haley from Appetite for Change, and we're both going to be chatting about food justice here in North Minneapolis and beyond. This is a conversation that will be a part of the Twin Cities Medical Society's Community Conversation series, and I'm super excited to chat with Princess today. Hi, Princess. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. So we are going to dive in and have a great conversation about all the work that Princess has been doing with her friends and different community members here in the Twin Cities surrounding food justice, specifically with Appetite for Change. So before we get started, I mean, we're talking about food here, and I like to think about food as something that's beyond a singular narrative. And I know that food is very historical and deeply cultural, but it is also very personal to each of us. So to start us off, I'd love to hear, Princess, what does food mean to you?
Oh, what does food mean to me? Food means what you put inside of your body, what you eat to feel well and to do what you're supposed to do. Food has always brought people together. It's a part of your culture. It's a way to express your love to another person. It's an activity to do that you actually get to accomplish something and then give it to someone, which is another way to show love. I believe that food has been a part of my life. My grandmother went to school for her culinary arts degree at the age of 54. And in the Black community in Chicago, we always had fish fries on Friday. And she had a friend who grew food. And would be always charged with hopping her fence to get the green tomatoes for us to fry at the fish fry. I believe that also food and growing food is an empowering tool. People often in my community might connect growing food with the painful toiling of the land that African Americans had in the past, but I definitely feel like it's empowering. Food is my responsibility. I'll end with that. Food, it's my responsibility to make sure that my family has fresh, living, local, home cooked food in their bellies. And I believe that the garden and the cutting board and the table are the stage of social engagement. And that's what food means to me.
Wow, thank you. I am so excited to kind of continue off of that thread and really talk about how food means so many different things, but especially what you said about food as responsibility, which is such a powerful way to frame it. And I think something that we overlook often while we're running from place to place, shoving ourselves with food, etc. But I want to continue off of what you said about food being a responsibility and having access to fresh local food, especially what that means here in the Twin Cities and specifically in North Minneapolis. And for anyone watching this, really thinking about food also as health and as a part of a community, what are some misconceptions you think people around this community and even beyond, like in the US, have surrounding food security and access in the Twin Cities specifically?
That's a great question. I think some of the misconceptions or myths, I like to call them, is that all of the fried, junky comfort food that is sprinkled ever so closely, like bad, sticky, wet glitter in urban areas, is what we desire to eat. The question often comes up when we're cooking and eating and talking because we use cooking as a community organizing tool. It's our flagship program at Appetite for Change called Community Cooks. And when we're asking the community about the 38 fast food restaurants that are there, they're telling me, I don't eat that. I don't even shop in North Minneapolis. I go over south to the co-op, or I forage at the Eloise Butler Flower Garden, or I grow food in my backyard, or I have an elder who puts together a CSA for me. So I think the assumption or the myth that the food this in Black communities or poor communities or urban areas is the food that they want to eat, and that there's not this structured system that has offered us those junky options in order to keep us in a place where we're always trying to just get that comfort food, and we're not standing in our own power and looking to solve our own issues. I think another misconception is that rural areas don't have food insecurities as well. We had an opportunity to connect with Area Learning Center in Rochester, Minnesota, and I gave kind of the blueprint or the format for how we created the Grow Food video, which was an invitation from our young people to other young people in urban areas who were not getting, healthy foods or fresh and local foods like in Chicago and Detroit and in those urban areas, to let them know that you can grow food in a city. Even if you don't have your own home, you can grow food like in pots in the front of your apartment. Or if you can't do that, you can grow herbs like on your kitchen counter or mushrooms in your house. And that message went out to this urban area, and those young people wanted to know, how do we do this video? And they did a response video called We Grow Food Too. But what they're talking about is they have issues around food access. I think another misconception is that it's just food access. I believe that it's not only food access, but it's access and it's food knowledge and skill. You have to be able to attain it. And then you have to be able to know what it is, because usually people will say, like when we introduce new produce to community members at Community Cooks, we'll say, okay, we're going to put leeks in this pepper steak. And they're like, I don't eat leeks. Like, you don't know leeks. You've never met a leek. I've never met a leek I didn't like. But to educate them about the leek being in the onion family or the green onion family, and then letting them try it, they go, oh, I like leeks. And then you know how to prepare it. So even if you have access and you don't know what it is and you don't know how to prepare it, I believe that can be a barrier. The last misconception I want to say is the language that we use and being so prescriptive. Is it food justice? Is it food sovereignty? Is it food insecurities? Is it a food swamp? Is it a food desert? Like, sometimes those words and the way we communicate about the simple, basic human right to be able to eat and feed your family fresh and local living food that makes you feel good. Like my daughter calls it, she calls it peace food. Eat a piece of what you know you ate with your family that's going to make you feel good. So your comfort food. Eat a piece of what you know is going to sustain and help your body heal itself, and be in peace in your mind about it. So we often kind of use food to separate us. I check this box when I identify my race and culture. I make this amount of money. I live in this zip code and I eat this kind of food. When really food is here to blur the lines, because we all have to eat food and it all comes out looking the same, if you know what I mean. So I think those are just a few misconceptions around food.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you pulled in so many different threads together there when, talking about urban and rural, but also what that means when we use specific languages, etc. I'd love to know a little bit more about how the history of appetite for change and how, what is your role within it, kind of the timeline, how it's evolved, and also how AFC has kind of blurred those lines of, those categories that we place food in and those identities then that also go into those categories. So tell me more about the history of AFC.
All right. Well, Appetite for Change started programming about 10 years ago. The conception of the actual nonprofit started about 9 years ago, where 3 women came together from totally different backgrounds: a recovering Jewish lawyer, a struggling Black vegetarian, and a refugee from the city of Chicago. I'm the refugee from Chicago. And we all knew that there was something wrong with the foodscape in North Minneapolis, but we thought it would almost be disrespectful to impose upon a community who is disproportionately affected and doesn't get to share voice or their narrative or their side of the story about it, to just tell them, hey, you got to eat healthy, you got to eat more food. So instead of doing that, we thought we would ask the community, did they like the food there? How did they feel about it? And what did they think solutions were going to be? So we did that instead of like just inviting people out, giving them a meal, doing a survey while people are kind of on their phones. We invited them to the cutting boards, and we cooked and ate and we dialogued. And we talked about the change that we wanted to see in North Minneapolis. And the community told us that they liked cooking and eating and talking, and wanted to talk about the police officers in the high schools and the changes to the transit and homelessness and economics and the ability to start businesses, or how hard it is to get a job. So we found that cooking could actually be a community organizing tool. So we made that our flagship program. We call it Community Cooks. We were doing that 52 nights a week pre-COVID, 52 nights a year pre-COVID. And then we started Appetite for Growing, because people said they wanted to teach to grow food or learn to grow food, or they had food they were growing that they wanted to sell. And then we started Northside Fresh, because we had so many other organizations and people that were connected, like the Michael Cheneys and the Candaces, that were already connected and working on food justice. So that was kind of our coalition of 36 community partners who were all working toward food justice. And then we had these young people who came to one of our Community Cooks events, my son, Latasha's daughter, and they were like telling us what to do and telling us that we were doing stuff wrong. And they kind of became our youth training and opportunity program. We were training them to grow in the garden and be like our labor force, and training them to facilitate Community Cooks events and welcome people. And those are the same young people that refused to eat hooks one night with me, 7:00 on West Broadway, starving in a conference room that holds 12 people with 25 youth. And they said, we're tired of eating this shit. We're not eating chicken with you tonight, princess. We don't care how stressed you are. They came back and told me that there was so many fast food restaurants, so many empty lots, so many vacant buildings. And they did a Kickstarter campaign to raise the money to open Breaking Bread Cafe and catering. That's the power behind community solving their own issues. We also managed Kindred Kitchen, was a shared kitchen incubation space. And within Breaking Bread Cafe, we had an adult culinary training program. We would harvest our produce and aggregate produce from other growers and sell that at the farmers market. And we just recently opened Station 81, which is a restaurant that serves local fresh food in the Union Depot station in St. Paul, because the Twin Cities are supposed to be responsible together. So when you talk about how we've used food to blur those lines, that's what we've done. We say real food for real people. We're just not, yes, we're located in North Minneapolis, and we organized with 400 community members who lived in North Minneapolis because they have lack of access. But that didn't mean that we didn't think people in South Minneapolis or Rochester or in St. Paul shouldn't have real food. That's why the tagline of Breaking Bread Cafe is real food for real people. So if you eat real food, raise your hand. Okay, I see everybody. And if you're a real person, raise your hand. All right, there we go. So that means everybody. That was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we've been getting meals out to Hennepin County Health Heroes, and now we're delivering meals to the NICU unit, to those front world essential workers. And we've been able to distribute 190,000 meals to organizations like Oak Park Neighborhood Services, Restoration Inc., Brothers Empowered, just to name a few, Better Futures Minnesota, so that they could get fresh cooked meals out to their constituent base. And instead of Community Cooks, because we got social distance, and we've been doing Community Cooks meal boxes. So we're in our third round, 56,000 meals that have been delivered to homes by DoorDash, where it's produce in a partnership with Local Crate and Good Acre and the produce that we grew. And we've got some happy proteins going in that box. And you get that with 2 recipes delivered to your house by a courier service on Monday morning, so that you can get back in the kitchen. Because after COVID and the uprising of George Floyd, after after George Floyd, we noticed that people went back to their comfort food. I was like, we're going to go to the store and we got to get zucchini and I hope there's more onions. And all the produce was there, but there was no ramen, there was no stovetop, there was no ravioli, there was no canned beans. So we knew if COVID is an issue and your digestive system starts in your gut, that how people were going to be eating with dealing with these universal traumas was going to impact their ability to be healthy through these hard times. We've also connected on a global level to a project called Social Gastronomy, where the other founders traveled to Chile to talk about, really to see that it's people all around the world that are doing what we're doing, that are cooking, eating, and talking about how they grow food and how it's their responsibility to feed their family. The last thing I want to say about this is that we've used to blur the lines is that people often think that change, I know there's stages of change. I can't think of the theorist, but he has these stages of change. And I believe that change happens individually, socially, and systemically in no particular order. If I'm making the change to decide that we're going to bypass McDonald's as much as we can, and I'm going to make turkey burgers at home. That's my individual change. And then socially, me making those decisions and thinking about my thinking and having this metacognition, this relationship with how I eat and what I eat around my peers is going to get them to thinking about it too. And that's going to make that social change. And then all of us can come together to ask the system to make some changes in the laws and the rules and the regulations, or commit funds to supporting efforts that we have in our community, or to create a system that works outside of their system. I hope that answered your question.
Oh my gosh, Princess, I hope you write a book someday, because this is exactly, having this conversation makes me remember just all the, the pain and kind of troubled history around food, but also the joy in coming together around food, which I think is what AFC represents for me in so many ways. And when you were talking about kind of how this organization has evolved over time, it just made me think about, that's the power of an organization built off of community coming together, because you've adapted in so many different ways, right? Like whether it's with the pandemic and with continued traumas and difficult events, and how you've kind of broadened your scope outside of the Twin Cities, and also still kind of managed to really stay true to your roots of real food for real people, which I absolutely love and appreciate. So thank you for sharing that. I think it goes back to the mission of AFC, which, if I can read it here, is food is a tool to build health, wealth, and social change. Which, that's what a way to sum up kind of everything you've been saying. Tell me more about that and how you think AFC, especially in this past year. We're in December here of 2020, so kind of thinking back and reflecting on a difficult year for many people, a difficult year for food and how we relate to it. Tell me about how AFC's mission of food as a tool to build health, wealth, and social change resonates for you specifically in this year.
Whew. Well, the mission, look, I'm going to lean back now. Like lean back like in my rocking chair. Health and wealth and social change used to mean that we know food has something to do with how healthy you are, even though we heard from many members of the community that healthy kind of comes with this negative connotation. Again, language can often be oppressive. If you're in the Black community, I know I've listened to the radio station, and as a Black woman, I have 5 number 1 killers. HIV is one. My lover is supposed to be one. High blood pressure is supposed to be one. Heart disease is supposed to be one. And ovarian cancer or something. Like, which one's really the number one? So this narrative of all of these things are going to kill me just reminds me that the African culture has usually always had a death-based narrative. I digress, but health meant the food that you eat and that you consume has a lot to do with your bodily maintaining and healthy and ability to, continue to be a body in motion. And wealth meant that you could use food to generate some income. You could do a food-based business. You could make that seasoning. I make my own seasoning salt. I can make my seasoning salt in a commercial kitchen, and I could sell that and generate revenue. Or I could do a catering business, or we could do some food-based business. I could grow food and sell it. And social change meant using the opportunity for people to come together around food to talk about other issues that we have. Can we talk about the violence in the community? Can we talk about the achievement gap, of our graduating Blacks and whites in Minnesota? And now, to me, and I've sent it in a million emails and written it in cards, like, greetings, your health is your wealth. Because when the system that we're working on, the social change to change the system, the system kind of closed their doors. The schools closed their doors, the jobs closed their doors, the grocery stores closed their doors. And another another startup that I had began in 2010 called Standard Edition Women was actually about assisting women with how they respond to trauma and transition. So I made this personal liberation plan where I understood that even though I work at Appetite for Change, I have to have a side job. That job is going to prepare me to be able to save some money or go on vacation or meet these other goals, because Appetite for Change pays the bills. And then at school, I'm going to send my daughter to school, but I'm going to supplement her education as a teacher. I'm going to make sure she's thinking, she can problem solve, she can process. So when the schools closed their doors, she still got straight A's. When I was off work for 2 weeks, I still had a few contracts bringing some money in. When the grocery stores closed their doors, I had food in the freezer. I had canned and jarred and blanched and frozen, and we had stuff that we could eat if the stores didn't open back up. I had seeds that I had saved that I would be able to grow. I probably couldn't have got my soil tested because the University of Minnesota was closed too for a while, but we would have grew some food and we would have ate, and we would have maybe been able to barter with the nail shop, like, I got some squash, y'all want to do my nails? And when the law enforcement, with the murder of George Floyd, when they start talking about not having that system or changing how that system looks, I always knew that within my personal liberation plan, whatever I built, how was I going to protect it? How was I going to keep it from being taken away from me? And so that health being your wealth is my mental ability to understand that I got this. And without that personal liberation plan, I couldn't have stood firm. Without knowing that there was food in there, without having the creative ingenuity to be able to say, okay, husband, if we can't find toilet paper, I'm cutting up all the old t-shirts. And we're just going to have like little diaper baby wipe kind of things. You get your own bag. We wash them in hot water. We wash the washer. Like, I'm from that day and age where our children had diapers. And if there was no more toilet paper, I don't know why the scare was around toilet, but if there was no more toilet paper, what would we do? Could we tap into some type of ingenuity and innovation to be able to solve our own issues? Or are we totally dependent upon the system? So to me now, that health, wealth, and social change means that our health is our wealth. Because if we have nothing else, if our children don't go back to school, we're in our households just trying to feel whole, as individuals and as spouses and as parents and as siblings. We just want to smile, and we're distressed because a lot's going on. And so how do you de-stress with distress? You blow some bubbles, you laugh, you watch some comedy, you stretch, you dance. And those are things that we don't need $1 to do. So that social change, what's happening to us and what we don't have access to and what we didn't have access to and what's being threatened, as we're all sitting around waiting on everything to go back to normal, there has to be a low point and a depth that we hit as the human race before we soar into our next evolution. And so I think this is that low point. It may even get lower, but I'm hoping and praying, like the way that life works and nature responds is that everything evolves. And so I'm hoping this is going to be the evolution of us as feeling closer, being closer, and that's going to be the social change impacted by everybody now just focusing on your health being your wealth.
Yeah, wow. To just let that sink in for a moment, I think a lot of us are thinking that somehow as we turn the chapter on this year, it's going to be dramatically different. But like you said, this isn't right. Like nature, I think also reminds us that this is a very evolving process and not always fast. And that healing is not always fast either, which I think is, yeah, that's something that your words just sparked for me right now. But when you talk about this phrase of personal liberation plan, tell me a little bit about how your work with AFC and beyond AFC, like you've mentioned, is related not only to like our individual kind of personal liberation plans, but also our collective liberation plans, and how that, what is the crosstalk between those two ideas?
I think everybody's in, and what the system doesn't allow is the randomness and the uniqueness and the beauty of the individual. The system from the beginning, as a kindergarten teacher, I always wondered, like, why do they have to walk in a straight line? Like, okay, kids, because I want to raise thinkers. Like, why do we walk in a straight line? And they're like, so we don't run into other kids, so we don't hurt each other and fall. And I'm like, okay, that's probably why we don't run down the hall, but we don't have to walk in a straight. I think we can walk in a bunch safely towards one side and not walk in a straight line, because we're gonna go in the hall when nobody else is in the hall, and then we're gonna just walk in a big wad, and we're gonna hold hands. We're gonna like walk in a spiral, and we would do these experiments to see if we could walk in these different bunches and spirals and make it safely based on what they said. But I think we're taught to walk in a straight line so that we can grow up and stay in a straight line and just follow the status quo. Like, it's such this school of fish effect that we don't get to have our own power and our own ability to say, I'm not ready yet. My example to that is when we first started Community Cooks, there was one young lady, and I had went natural with my hair, and Tasha was thinking about going natural with her hair, and, you know, eating fresh vegetables. And Tasha was vegetarian, and I was still kind of dibbling and dabbling and eating pork to pay homage to my ancestors who were so creative that they made chitlins a delicatessen for us to hang around and still be here. So I remember this young lady was like, I'm not going natural with my hair. I ain't eating these vegetables, and just really didn't want to participate in Community Cooks and eating good food, but only was doing it because she was pregnant. So for her own different reason and interest on eating healthy, I might have a different interest on eating healthy. I'm not pregnant. So I have a different reason that motivates me to eat healthy. I have thalassemia. That's my reason for having to eat healthy. So we have different reasons that bring us in. So I can't appeal to you by saying, oh, yes, if you have a sickness or a disease, you should eat healthy, when you don't have a sickness and a disease, but you have a child. So then I have to make this long script of everything that motivates people to eat healthy to appeal to everyone. But you have to have a more common basic. That's why I like Real Food, Real People, a more common basic message that gives everybody their entry point. But then once they enter, you have to have a space for everybody to participate. I'm gonna go get fried chicken. And you know, the other day the comedian was saying, Black women don't talk like this. Sometimes we do. I guess we do. When I'm gonna eat fried chicken, it's gonna be because I'm stressed. So it's gonna say to me, something's going on that you need to know. When I eat fried chicken, I'm going to want hot sauce. So it's going to say to me, what are you going through? So can I eat fried? Everybody thinks everybody at Appetite for Change is vegan or vegetarian. We're not, okay? We are humans who are in different levels of our food abilities, of our food interests. And that personal type of liberation doesn't sit within the system. The system says either you're vegan or you're vegetarian or I'm flexitarian. I might mix it up a little bit, but don't judge me, because more than likely I don't eat as much meat as I wish I could. I choose to have that hummus bowl, and my husband may have a burger, and my daughter might go out and have, what's your favorite place to eat from?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. And I support that, but they're doing that once a week. So somebody might judge us if they see us at the deli section at Walmart getting sliced lunch meat with nitrates in it. And I'm like, man, I know I'm the lady from Grow Food, but can I have a sandwich? Like, can I eat some sandwich bread? Like every now and then? And it's really listening to how your body feels. I think last night, something I learned from the students at the University of Minnesota was about health at every size. And so it's going to look different from everybody, and each person to be able to set up their own plan for how they're going to feed their family, feed themselves. Like, I can't eat what my daughter can eat. I can't eat what my son can eat. He has a really high metabolism. His stomach has so much acid it burns through the first meal. So he has to eat a meal to get hungry. So I know I got to make a double plate for him. And my stomach doesn't do certain berries or certain nuts in the same way. Like, people have food allergies. So instead of us creating this one right way for everybody to eat, kind of like the food pyramid, which I think fooled us all when it said fruits and vegetables, because then I thought they were interchangeable. It doesn't say grains and proteins. So if I eat fruit, I'm checking off vegetables, when I know vegetables are the living food that gives me the vital minerals that I need to sustain my body and my organs and actually heal and boost my immune system. Like, giving people that information, answering the why. And if that was any message that I could share with physicians, or people who are going to be in the medical field working with other people, answer the why and answer the how. Don't just say, hey, you know what? You've got this, and take this medicine and then do these other things that you should do all the time anyway. Get plenty of rest, drink plenty of water, and exercise. But, and tell me if you have any side effects. But can I ask you the question, like, what test did you do to tell you that my body has this deficiency? And what were you looking for in those labs? And what were the numbers that were low? And what could I eat to make that different? Or what did I do to make this happen to me? Because each person has to have an understanding of their own body, and then be comfortable enough to share that information with their children as a way to communicate nature and nurture. Not nature versus nurture. They're not against each other and opposing. We don't get to pick one. Your DNA has a lot to do with it, and also the environment that you're in equally as well. So I think it's all about that individual and that basic understanding of kind of like who you are, what you're eating, when you eat certain things, how you feel when you eat them, why you're eating them, and what you need to eat based on your goals in your life.
I'll just start off by saying that, Princess, I think you're the kindergarten teacher that I wish I had in kindergarten. So thank you for this. And you talked about this briefly, but I'd love to, as a way to kind of wrap up our conversation, which I know could be ongoing and continuing forever, because that's what food does for all of us, is that it's something that changes and evolves and is important to us all personally. To close us off, I'd love to, especially for some of our viewers, ask you, we'll be sharing this conversation with physicians and health professionals and medical students, and you did touch on this a little bit, but I'd love to know what, in your eyes, what can physicians and medical students and these health professionals do to support your work, to support AFC's work, and everything we talked about surrounding real food for real people?
Well, I believe to support the work is to, first and foremost, when you're sitting with a client or a patient in any of those positions, See a family member. See a member of the human family that's sitting with you. Because I often feel like if I'm at the doctor with my mom or my daughter or my husband, like the doctor doesn't see them or care as much as I do. Because I'm like, no, he's not sleeping, or no, it's been numb for these many days and it was itchy and is numb tingling. Did it like I know, and they're not really, they don't seem to be as in, they don't have this look in their face. Like, I'm concerned. I want to know. And I've done my research and read my little medical books and looked up my herbs. And then I'm asking those questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. And they're like, oh, am I talking to him or am I talking to you? So allow family members to be concerned and probably see that person as a member of your human family. And if people want to know more and support Appetite for Change, our website, we have a brand new website that just went up. It's www.afc, like Appetite for Change, MN, like Minnesota.org. 3 of my favorite places on that website is news. So if you go all the way to the bottom, click little word that says news, you get to see like the latest on our numbers and what we've been doing. I love to share our impact. It's all about our reach. It's all about how far. It's all about how many, because that tells us that we still have a need. And since COVID, we found that the food insecurities have increased. That one grocery store in North Minneapolis that serviced 67,000 community members was closed. So then what were they going to eat? It's already only one grocery store servicing 67,000 community members. So if I go buy the beets to cook them with the community, there's no more beets and they're not going to restock them for a while. And then there's another part on the website that I like. It's down there at the bottom. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says press. And that's where you can see nice videos of what Appetite for Change has done. The third part of that website is the connection page. I know people probably thought I was going to say donate. Donate's right at the top. Yes, you can always give money. Money's great. It helps us get those meals out. But for people to donate also their time and their resources, this is for me all about community building and connecting. So there's a button at the bottom that says connection, and you can let us know if you want us to come out and speak to your group. You can let us know if you're interested in volunteering. You can let us know if you want to do some research with us. So that connection piece is important for me. And yes, of course, if you go to afcmn.org at the top, there's a button, a big green button that says donate. And definitely your generous support will go a long way. I also want to say that every Wednesday at 1:00, I go live on YouTube. So if you have resources in your community that you want to share with us, you can email them to me, princess@afc, like Appetite for Change, MN, like Minnesota.org. And I'll share those on my live. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, we have a YouTube page that has super fun videos. You can watch Grow Food, which was the viral video that the young people did in competition with the young people who opened a restaurant the year before. They're like, we're going to do a rap video. It's going to go viral. And it did. And then after that video, they did a silent film that didn't get as much attention, but it was called A Day in Advisory. I really like that one because it talked about what young people in my community have to go through just to go to school. So every day they're facing racial profiling, stereotyping, and junky food. They're just overwhelmed by it. And that challenges their mental health. And so that goes back to your health being your wealth. Our poor babies. But they are identifying their issues and they know that they are a part of their own solutions. And then finally, we have our newest video that just released called Trap or Grow. So this was an idea for the young people to challenge other young people who were on the corners, and we can't assume what they're doing because they may not have homes or safe places to be. But these young people who are in the trap on the corners, that if we have gardens on alternate corners, that they have a choice. So they were trying to answer the question, are you going to trap or are you going to grow? And we know, I believe that the best name for the street is the trap, because so many young people get caught up in it. And we know what that ends to. I don't have to speak that and give it any more energy, but they were getting the message out that young people do have a choice. They can trap or they can grow. So check us out on all those social media platforms. Reach out to me. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate this platform. And make sure that you go home and cook a scrumptious dinner with your family tonight.